Okay, guys. So after my last video upload, I had some questions come in and asked me to do a video about the brushes that I use and color mixing. So I'm going to talk about the brushes that I use. None of this stuff is sponsored, as far as if I mention any name brands or anything like that. But I thought I'd go through my brushes and tell you what I use and kind of give you my opinion on brushes. Um, and what kind of brushes I like to use for certain kinds of strokes or certain kinds of types of paint. So let's start off real quickly with when it comes to like Bob Ross style paintings, using 2-inch brushes. I simply do not use those. I use 1-inch brushes, and for kind of a good reason for myself. When I'm doing a painting, I'm not in a hurry to get done. To me, art is all about the journey and not so much about the destination. I mean, once the painting is done, it's done, and I don't revisit it again. And I very seldom paint the same thing or close to the same thing twice. So, doing it is what's the most fun for me. So, that's what I use. So let's talk about some different brushes here. I've got my 1-inch pail, and I'll tell you kind of what I use each one of these for. So let's start off. We'll start off with these two brushes. They've got green square handles, and their brush tips are relatively rough. Now, and you'll notice that these are very flexible. I'll just recondition both of these brushes. And you can see by the paint that's on the ferrule that I've used them quite a lot. These are Brandon Thomas Art 1-inch brushes. I particularly like to use them. I don't like to use them so much for sky as much as I like to use them for like laying in brush. And the reason for that is because, or landscape type grass stuff. So real quick, let's just put a little bit of liquid white on the, I guess I'll better take my thing off the primer. All right, so let's just pick up some liquid white here, put a little bit here on the canvas. We don't need to put a lot on there because we're not going to paint all that much. And then let's grab some paint. It doesn't really matter what color. So I got some regular paint over here on. Let's just pick up some of this. So this is just red. So I had some red grass today. So now you can load this brush, with and if you watch some Brandon Thomas Art's videos, you'll see how they create this dog tail on the brush. And so it's kind of nice when you're doing that to kind of take the brush at kind of an angle and kind of push it up like that. And you can see that you can create lots of brush. I did a lot of that. Here, let me hold it up where you can see it a little better. So you can see it kind of splays out when you do that. It's kind of nice. It makes really nice brush and really nice. You can also use it kind of like tap 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 like this, to make nice landscape stuff. And since the bristles are uneven, it makes a nice way to push up landscape. So that's primarily what I use those for. I also tend to use them for, let me show you something different. Like if I'm trying to tap in a tree, I'll use the edge of the brush, just the corner. Just kind of tap, 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 tap. And really quickly you can get, a bunch of little tree-like topics out there. It's not very hard. So you kind of put dark, and then put a lighter color over the top of that. So, now my own personal preference, some people like those square handles. They're more comfortable in their hand, but realize I don't have any feeling in my left hand due to early military injury. So round brushes are easier for me to handle. So almost, I think every other brush I have is round handled. So it's just, but that's the way BT makes his. And so if you like that kind of brush, it'd be for you. So let's go next to another 1-inch brush. And these are the Bob Ross 1-inch brushes. I think this might be the last one I've had. I've kind of worn the rest of them out. Yep. All right, so this is the last of those. These brushes are relatively expensive compared to other things that you can get on the market. But they're good for, whatever you use a 1-inch brush for. They too will make like a real nice, kind of a landscape thing. Or if you want to kind of tap in some trees with those, you can kind of do that, as well. So, there's lots of things that you can do with that brush. Now, I go through some 1-inch brushes because I do a lot of landscape painting. So my favorite brush to use for 1-inch brush is this brush. It's a black round handled brush. This is a Kevin Hill 1-inch brush. These brushes they're a little bit longer than the Bob Ross brushes as far as the bristles. The bristles are very nice and they're fairly even when you first get them. Even though Kevin says not to use soap and water on these, I do, using the same process that I use on restoration of my brushes. And I have seven of them. I have 7 of them altogether. So, I use these a lot. And they're my favorite 1-inch brush. And they're relatively inexpensive compared to the other ones, but they're made well. So, as compared to like the Bob Ross brushes, but they're made very well. They ship really fast. I just like the way they perform. I think my oldest one is maybe this one. And this one, if you look, you can see that I have worn. Let me get them even. I've worn the edges of it off. But I use these brushes an awful lot, and like I say, they're not very expensive. Okay, so there's that 1-inch brushes. The next brush I use a lot is this brush. This is a Bob Ross brush. This is an oval brush. It's got a black handle too, but Kevin doesn't offer this one. But it's an oval brush. I like it a lot for doing things like tapping in trees, or if I want to get like a rounded edge. But it's really good for tapping in trees because you can kind of like tap and then tap, 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 and really get that nice oval shape as you're coming down on a tree. And I really like that. I like that a lot. I've had this brush for a long time. It's the only one I have. I don't know why. I mean, because I use it a lot. I don't know exactly how worn it is. Now, all these brushes that you're looking at are a couple of years old. I haven't bought any brushes in the 1-inch or the oval brush in a long time. So, they last a long time if you take good care of them. And I think I do take pretty good care of my brushes. I didn't when I first started painting, and that can get expensive real fast. So, take care of them. This is a round brush. This too is a Bob Ross brush. I use this a lot, mostly for blending. It's a very nice brush to blend with. And actually, I also blend with my 1-inch brushes. If you take the time to practice with your brushes, you will get better at that. You will not have to use a mop. Of course, mops are pretty nice. Or if you use like a makeup brush, those are pretty nice. I think if you watch Grayscale Painting on Anthony's channel, I think you'll see Anthony use those every once in a while, and they seem like they work out real well for them. All right, so there's that. So let's move to my next kind of brushes. 5 different more kinds of brushes that I use. This is my collection of Filberts. When I first started painting, I didn't use Filberts very much, but watching Kevin Hill, and watching Brandon actually has done a little bit of that. Marion Dutton uses a filbert quite a bit. And the more I've used a filbert, the more I like it. It's a very diverse brush for doing all sorts of things. You can take it and you can like tap in your own trees. Like that. They're very easy to tap in. You can do other things like tap in clouds. You can just kind of tap, tap, tap and put a cloud in. Of course, this is a nice bright red cloud. You don't see a whole heck of a lot of those in the sky. But, you know, it makes a really nice cloud shape. You can fine line with it fairly well. You can bring it to a pretty sharp edge and use it for like tree branches and stuff. You know, so it's a great brush for that kind of thing. Now I have different sizes, and if you use filberts a lot, make sure you keep them clean because they will get stiff. If you get paint down in your ferrule, they're gonna get stiff, so you're gonna need to restore them. But I use them all the time. I have a bunch of different sizes and a bunch of different types. This is a Bob Ross filbert. This is the number 6 that you see Bob use. This is not a filbert. This is a flat, so I'll put it out of the way for right now. Look at this poor filbert. This is, I don't think this is just like some generic brand. Yeah, Simply Simmons, but I have worn the bristles right the heck off of this one. This one is a Winsor & Newton. You can buy these at Michael's and find them on sale quite a bit of times. This one is so freaking filthy dirty I couldn't tell you what brand it is. This filbert. There's another one. I can't really tell you what the brand is. Oh, wait a minute. It's a number 6 too, a Nicole brush. So, you know, I look for these on Amazon, and I tend to buy them from Amazon. This is an Artify. I've used this brush quite a bit, and this is probably also an Artify. Yeah, this is also an Artify. And these are Pro Art. This one's Pro Art. So you see, I'll use a lot of different brands. Probably have more Artifis than any because I actually found them in a set on sale for like $5 for a whole set of them, and so I just bought them all. I bought everything they had. So, and this one here is a Winsor & Newton as well. So, you know, you can't really go wrong with a filbert if you're you know, looking for ones that are you know, have got natural bristles in them. Now I do have some filberts that are I don't know if I have them down here though right now. I do have some filberts that are also this is my angle brush. What's it doing over there? Synthetics, but I only use them when I'm doing portraits. Because for landscape, this you need a stiffer brush for oil painting for that. So, but when I'm doing glazing, they're nice. It's nice to use a nice synthetic to glaze things back over. So, all right, flats. Let's talk about flats. I have quite a few flats because I use them a lot in portraits. And I have a lot of different sizes. So I've got some angle brushes that kind of fit in that same class. So this angle brush is a Princeton. These are kind of like the ones that Julian Baumgartner uses for his restoration stuff. This too is an Aston Princeton brush. I like this brush. I like it because it's being a flat, it's small, and I can really pull it to a sharp point. I've got another one in here like that too. This is a Winsor & Newton flat. I've been a little bit disappointed by these brushes. They don't really hold an edge as quite as sharp. They're nice for doing flat type work when you don't have to do fine line kind of work. But I'm not too crazy about them for the fine line type work. I can actually do more fine lining with this Princeton angle brush and this Princeton flat than I can with either one of those. Now this is an Artify brush, so even though I use a lot of Artify filberts, I'm not too thrilled with the Artify flats. They're okay for large strokes, but but they don't pull to an edge for when I'm doing fine line type work. So it makes them not my favorite. This is another Princeton. These Princeton brushes, I'm pretty tickled with these. I got quite a few of these small flats. Actually, this is a bright, but they work pretty nice. They're pretty nice. What is this one now? This is something different. This is a Winsor & Newton. It's another that does nice broad stroke stuff, but not too good on sharp flat lining. On the fine iron. This is a Winsor & Newton. It's a little larger. What is it, 6? No, it's a 4. I use this brush quite often for large fill-in type areas or glazing. It works pretty good for glazing, although I prefer to use a synthetic if I'm glazing portraits, not so much when I'm doing things I've underpainted. So I've got all sorts of different sizes of those. I've got all sorts of different brands. Now I did buy some of these Artist Loft brushes to do portraiture, and they do pull to an edge pretty well, but it doesn't. The durability of that brush is not very good. So if you use it a whole lot, it'll start to splay out of its fine lining capability fairly easy. But at least so far, that's been my experience. The brushes are kind of thick in the middle, and they're very soft, but I'm just not too thrilled with those. And then this is a Master's Touch Bright, and it's good for fine line stuff. So anyway, there's kind of that. Fan brushes. I use every kind of fan brush in the world that there probably makes. I've got lots of 6s and 3s. I don't use anything hardly else that's in between that. I wear fan brushes out relatively quickly compared to like my 1-inch brushes. Although I've got some 3-year-old fan brushes. I've worn the bristles down off of them pretty good though. There are cheaper solutions than going to Bob Ross brushes because although I have some Bob Ross brushes, but you can look on Amazon and buy various size 6-packs, 12-packs of fan brushes that are natural bristle from China or wherever, and they last a pretty good long time. So I'm not too particular about fan brushes. But let's go to the next group. So there's not too much I can really tell you about fan brushes that everybody doesn't already know. Let's go to these round brushes because all my round brushes, I think, are just about made of, these are all Artifis, every single one of them. Artifi. Oh, wait a minute, there's one Master's Touch in here. One Master's Touch, which that round brush is pretty small, but it's actually this is a script liner. It's in the wrong jar. Let's say, what did I thought for sure all these were. Yeah, so I have all of these, and these guys pull down and make some pretty nice fine lines. You need to work with them a bit to get used to them and they do tend as they get older to round off. Now, as they round off and you can't fine line with them anymore, you can still do other things with them. You can draw tree branches. You can use them to like scrub in things when you're trying to like landscape. You can kind of be free with it that way. So really, which I actually do that a lot. You can put a lot of if you're not going for a lot of detail, you can kind of scrub in pretty nice with a round brush like that. My trees are already starting to dry. That's weird. Oh, you know what though? I didn't put any medium on there, so that probably explains that. So anyway, there's that. Artifis on round brush is my recommendation. I've not had good luck with those type in a Bob Ross format. Now, let me say this about that. Most of my Bob Ross brushes that I owned I've owned them. They were the first brushes that I owned. And back in those days, when I first got Bob Ross brushes, I did not know how to take care of my brushes very well. So, there may come a time when I use them a little bit more. Also for glazing, there's another flat. Now this is a synthetic. This is a My Artscape brush. I have I have several sets of these brushes in different formats. This is a size 6. This is a glazing brush, and I really like this brush. You hold it way back when you're glazing with it, and it's very nice and soft. And when you're painting with a medium and that kind of stuff, you know, it's very nice to work with. And then I have a bunch of little script liners. You know, I tend to use longer script liners than shorts, but I've got some short ones, you know, for very small details. I've never been all that crazy about small brushes or script liners because they tend to splay. No matter what you do with them, they tend to splay. So I have like all these little bitty guys that I use for fine line. Now, some of these are script liners, like this one. You know, it's long, and then but like here's a perfect example of this script line. So now I'm sure that I probably restored this brush like last month sometime, and I may have used it once or twice, and it's playing again. I'll just take it and restore it, and it'll be fine for the next half a dozen uses, and then not so much. But you know, the rest of these guys, the problems with like brushes like this little guy right here. Now, if I was doing acrylic, I might like this brush where I can, you know, if you ever watch Little Painter Girl when she paints, I mean, she does a lot of that little small stroking. It's amazing to watch her. She just kind of do, and then poof, like there's a picture. I don't paint like that, so these small brushes, they don't work all that well for me. They just don't. So I use larger, longer script liners. I like script liners that will hold a lot of paint, because when I start painting a tree and I start, you know, I only want to fill a script liner a couple of times, and then I don't want to be bothered with having to keep going back every 16th of an inch and getting more paint on my brush. And these little bitty brushes just don't hold enough paint to suit me. But you know, it's your personal preference. You know, I have a ton of them because they come in, you know, different paint sets I've had over the years, and I just collect them because I don't hardly ever use them. So there's that. All right, is there anything else I've got that I want to talk about? Knives. I can talk about knives a little bit. Absolutely positively, the number one knife I use is a Bob Ross small knife. I have Bob Ross large knives. I have 2 of these, and I have 3 of these, and 2 of these. No, let's see. I have 2 of these small knives that are Bob Ross knives. I have 2 of these that are large that are Bob Ross knives, and I have 2 of these that are artist loft knives. Honestly, I don't see any difference between these and the artist loft knives. I like them okay. This is a Master's Touch knife. I've used it for a few things. I don't use it for a lot. It's just whatever kind of knife you want to get used to. Whatever you do, pick something and stay with it for a little while and find out if it'll either work for you or it won't. But then once you've learned it, if you like it okay, go ahead and try something else too, though. That's what I did with this knife, this triangle diamond shaped knife. I hadn't used it for a long time. I watched Marion Dutton do it, and I was like, oh man, she makes that look really easy with that knife. So I think I'll learn how to do it too. So I did. Now, am I ever going to be great with that knife? Bleh, probably not, because I'm not going to want to fool with it so much. But I have other things I want to paint, so I don't really have time to mess with that. But I will push myself to learn it, because I'm always painting is all about learning everything I paint. I may fail. Not too long ago, recently, I had a painting when I was doing live, and I failed it. Not because the painting itself, but my arm. I have a torn rotator cuff, so you know, my arm kind of wore out before my painting task was over. The painting had to sit overnight. After it sat overnight, I had to use an experimental kind of gesso on it, and that really didn't go well. It bled through the oil paint, so it looked terrible when it was done. So here's my here's my artist loft knife, my short knife, and then I also have this knife, which I use hardly ever. I do use it every once in a while, just because I like to remind myself, hey, I spent some money on this. We should learn how to use it. So I don't do a lot of palette knife paintings, although I do use the palette knife quite a bit when I'm doing landscapes for things like water and mountains and rocks and trees and different kinds of things. So, just try different things. That's all I can say. All right, and last but not least, I have a half a dozen brushes like this. Now, these are just regular synthetic painters, like house painter brushes. This is a 2.5. I have my favorite is a 2-inch brush or 1-inch brush. I like both of those, although I like the 2-inch brush. Actually, I don't think I have any 1-inch brushes like that. I have a 2.5-inch brush, a couple of them. I have a couple of 2-inch brushes, and I have 2.5-inch. That's what this is, 2.5-inch, a couple 2 inches, and a couple of 1.5-inch brushes. I use these exclusively for putting on gesso. I don't use them for anything else but that. They immediately get cleaned out and set back on the drying table to dry again. I store them like this so the water runs right out of them. And I only use these. So I have an acrylic set of brushes, which I don't do a lot of acrylic painting anymore, but I still do some. I have that set of brushes for acrylic gesso, and all the rest of the brushes I showed you today I use exclusively for oil paint. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. I'll be glad to, if you have other ideas for videos that you'd like to see, I'll be glad to talk about them, and we'll go from there. So I hope you guys will leave me a like and a subscribe, and we will see you next time.